Welcome into the PFF NFL show. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson, and we are continuing our recaps of every team's draft. The NFC is already in the books. If you guys are listening on the podcast, you can check out the previous two episodes. We had to split them into two, essentially splitting them all into four, two per conference. So the NFC is already done. You guys can go listen to those. If you're on YouTube, go check those out as well. Today we're going to start the AFC. We're going to start with the AFC East and the North. Is that the schedule for today?
Sure.
Thanks, Sam. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Excellent.
Well, we got that out of the way.
Yeah.
We have so much fun going through these drafts, don't we? We did so much prep. We did so much work preparing for this thing. We knew our draft guide inside and out. I mean, we wrote the whole thing.
We did.
So you guys can also know the draft inside and out. Go get your PFF draft guide. It's all a part of PFF Edge or Elite. I do highly recommend Elite, though, because of what is coming this summer.
Yeah, Premium Stats version 2.0, the thing we've wanted for years. Forget about you guys. We wanted it internally to fix Premium version 1.
This has been like a 5-year request.
All the changes that we wanted to be made are now happening, and you guys are going to get them as well.
Kind of shows what kind of pull we have here.
That it's taken 5 years to get done?
Yeah.
And had almost nothing to do with us once it did get done?
Wait till the request I'm making this week shows up 5 years from now. I'm going to be excited. I can't wait. Yeah, so it's all part of PFF Elite. That's your premium stat package. If you're just going to get Edge, you get the PFF Draft Guide, you get the QB Annual, and you get 365 days of access plus all the fantasy tools.
And now is when you want the draft guide, because before you didn't know who you were getting. You just wanted some information on the draft class. Now you've got a list of players that your team just selected. You want to know everything about them. Grab the draft guide for that data.
Exactly. Go get it. It's at join.profootballfocus.com. All right, let's go to the AFC East. We're going to start with the Buffalo Bills. They make a move to go get their guy, Josh Allen. By all accounts, he was their guy.
They might not want the draft guide.
They might not have used the draft guide. Let's not hate on Josh Allen. We have been pointing out all the teams that seem like they may have used the draft guide.
Yeah.
Because we do have multiple NFL teams, almost every NFL team, with PFF data and with the draft guide circulating around all the scouts. We actually have seen that in front offices before. I'm not saying the Bills didn't use it at all, but they did love Josh Allen. They went up to 7 to get him. What were the reports? They were going to go up to 5?
Had a deal on the table with the Denver Broncos, but Denver, I don't want to say they reneged on it, but at the point where Bradley Chubb was available on the board when they came up to pick, they bailed on any concept of trading down and just turned in the card with Bradley Chubb's name on it. So, yeah, Buffalo were prepared to go up to 5 to get their guy.
I think when you look back at this decision by the Bills, it'll be this Josh Allen versus maybe Josh Rosen, and I guess Lamar Jackson as well. I mean, technically he's in the mix, but I think, on our draft board, we had Rosen as the number 3 quarterback. So at that point, if we were taking a quarterback, it would have been Josh Rosen. This feels like that decision for the next, 5-10 years, whatever it is. Bills fans may be weighing, did we make the right decision with Allen versus Josh Rosen? If you want the full breakdown on Josh Allen, YouTube channel, we have about a 10-minute video breaking down all of his strengths and weaknesses, everything we liked and did not like about his game. We'll give you the short version. Unbelievable athlete, unbelievable arm strength, velocity is there, could throw the ball a million miles, has some pretty key parts of his game that he needs to iron out from a pure accuracy, decision-making, just winning from the pocket standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if you need to bring Josh Rosen into it. It's really just a referendum on whether you were right on the Josh Allen thing. He was this polarizing prospect of people who looked at the arm, watched him throw a ball, and said, okay, I'm sold. I don't need to see anything else. That arm is generational talent. That is something nobody else in the league can do. We are taking this guy, and we are going to try and turn him into the quarterback that we hope he can be. Then the other side of the people are the guys that actually watched his tape and went, oh, man, there's a lot of bad things in here. And I don't know if being able to throw the ball through a brick wall is going to offset many of these problems. So there were the latter people had him as, a borderline first-round guy, a second-round prospect that needed some work to be a productive quarterback. The former were talking about taking him number 1 overall. And it's really going to come down to what the Bills can do with this guy. There is something to work with. He isn't Christian Hackenberg, who was the last quarterback that we kind of were railing against because all he was physical tools. At least Allen is physical tools. You know, he does have legitimately the best arm to come along for years.
And he's at least had a good season under his belt.
Yeah, he was good.
He was good in
2016. He does certain things well. He does make a lot of big-time throws. He does play well in the red zone. Those are two important aspects of the game that he's going to need to be good at because he is basically an accurate guy. Hackenberg didn't even have that. Hackenberg had no tools, had no play, was just bad. Bad at everything, no business being drafted, no kind of prospect. So there is a distinct difference between him and Josh Allen. The question is just how important is a colossal cannon for an arm versus all of the other things.
Yeah, and the thing about the arm, too, is it didn't always... It was almost like it showed up on the field. Like you see it every time he throws the ball. You see that velocity. It wasn't always needed on the field. There was that one pass in the bowl game where it's like, okay, he threw this ball so fast, nobody had a chance to make a play on it. That's a Josh Allen throw that nobody else can make. But then you see other throws that maybe Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield makes into tight window traffic where it's like, okay, maybe the velocity wasn't as good as Josh Allen's, but they're still making it. So what's the difference? It doesn't matter. Let's stick with some of the positives on Josh Allen. He did grade at 84.7 in 2016. That was 12th in the draft class. That was a very good season. That was when he kind of broke out and, caught everyone's attention. And I keep saying I was at the forefront of some of that hype, and I really liked him, but it was from this, wow, intriguing tools. Let's see that development. And on our preseason draft guide, the question, it was like, hey, this guy makes special throws. He also misses too many throws. In 2016, he led the nation in big-time throw percentage. We love that number. Those are those special throws. He has them. He was high last year as well in the draft class, ranked 7th in big-time throw percentage. The thing that did not change from 2016 to 2017, though, turnover-worthy plays were high. He was 29th in the draft class at avoiding turnover-worthy plays out of 38 qualifiers, and he had the second highest percentage of negatively graded throws in our throw-for-throw grading system, because that's what we do here. We grade every single play. So being second highest in negatively graded throws in the draft class, that all led to a 73.1 overall grade, 34th in the draft class. So when you look at Allen, and I keep saying with these guys, it's not all just like a yes or no thing with a lot of these quarterbacks. I think his two grades kind of sum things up. I'm looking straight at the draft guide right now. 84.7 down to 73.1. You could see, I'm not saying those would be the exact grades, but you could maybe see some of that fluctuation at the NFL level, that inconsistency, where if he does have the supporting cast and all these excuses that people made, maybe he could put together a very good season. But I think when you compare him to the other top 3 quarterbacks in the class, or top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the class, he's just behind them in very key, important areas.
And the thing is, the supporting cast argument just doesn't make a lot of sense in a bunch of different ways. One, he had a pretty good supporting cast the year before, where he was better. And when that disappeared, his play fell off a cliff. The problem is, he was still playing against a low level of competition. It's not like, what you gain in terms of having a bad supporting cast playing at Wyoming, you lose back in terms of the players that you're going up against largely when Wyoming's playing. The other thing is, if you're talking about a guy whose supporting cast is the reason that he's not able to play well, that isn't a franchise quarterback. Can you name me a high-level franchise quarterback in the NFL whose play falls off a cliff when his supporting cast isn't great? Those guys are able to elevate their level of competition and look good in spite of the players around him. Aaron Rodgers is able to make virtually any receiver look capable. Tom Brady has made a list of nobodies into household names. If you're going to look at this guy and say, well, if you don't give him a whole load of NFL talent, he's not going to be able to play, that's not a guy I want to go aggressively after as my future franchise quarterback.
So I feel like we've spent a lot of this time almost railing against what we assumed NFL teams would think and say, and just be like, our take at PFF is different from what they have. Until I've heard the Browns front office, and we'll talk about this when we discuss the Browns draft in a little bit, until we've heard them describe their process and why they picked Denzel Ward at 4, but more importantly, why they picked Baker Mayfield and why they had Josh Allen at number 4, I believe, on their quarterback board. Alonzo Highsmith, who's in their front office and is a part of their decision-making process, essentially what he said, Baker Mayfield lost 2 receivers and he was the same quarterback. Josh Allen, big arm, he could throw the ball from here to the moon. When they have to make excuses, though, why are they not completing passes? That's a problem. And essentially, it's the same thing we're saying. If you start with excuses and or arm strength, when do you get to the good stuff? When you start to describe Mayfield and Darnold and Rosen and these other guys, arm strength is like, oh, by the way, he's got enough for the NFL. So that's the big thing with Allen. The weather thing that's been discussed, the swirling winds of Buffalo aren't going to make Allen better. It doesn't make him a better fit for Buffalo. He's going to a cold weather city the same way Baker Mayfield, the same way Sam Darnold is. I mean, they're all going to play in some treacherous weather along the way. I don't think that makes him a better fit in Buffalo just because he throws faster. Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, is how you turn Josh Allen to a successful quarterback, because I think there is a way of doing it. The other thing is there were some people get hung up on his completion percentage, and the Josh Allen supporters are saying, don't look at this completion percentage. It doesn't tell the real story because he doesn't throw as many screens as Baker Mayfield. 20% of Baker Mayfield's pass attempts were screens. If Allen had that, his completion percentage would be way higher. It's a misleading number. And to a degree it is. The completion percentage is definitely affected by a bunch of things like those screen attempts that don't do Josh Allen any favors. Having said that, when you start looking at our advanced ball charting data, the stuff that you can find in the draft guide, when we looked at exact ball location, where you were putting the ball, not just whether it was complete or not, but where that ball was in relation to the receiver, he was bad on the short stuff. So the behind the line of scrimmage, the easy passes that you expect the quarterback to make, i.e., where all those screens would be, he was terrible at that. Oh, look at this.
Hold on, Sam. We have a special delivery from Austin here. Wow.
We have
Thank you,
coffee
Austin.
delivered to the podcast.
No sugar.
Amazing.
Thank you. Just black. Thank you so much, Austin. I appreciate it. We'll send you a tip a little bit later.
This is like the finest day of PFF podcasting.
We just got delivered a full, fresh cup of coffee.
It would be better if my mug didn't say
I'm
Team Steve on it.
We're going to go dead air so we can both sip.
It would be nicer if my mug didn't say Team Steve on the side of it.
Hashtag Team Steve. That's right. Team Steve. Oh, you can't see it. We'll zoom in.
He was bad at the stuff behind the line of scrimmage, the easy stuff where all the screens are. So even if you gave him a load of screens, 20% of his pass attempts, it might make it better. It wouldn't make him accurate.
And we're talking about actual ball location too, not completion percentage.
So let's stop trying to pretend that Josh Allen is an accurate quarterback, right? Because he just isn't. There's no sense in trying to achieve that as your argument. It's foolish. It doesn't make any sense. Let's instead focus on the fact that being an inaccurate quarterback is not necessarily a death knell for an NFL quarterback.
That's a great way of putting it, Sam. We're not saying he's got no shot.
You can be inaccurate and be a very good NFL quarterback. Cam Newton and Carson Wentz last season were two of the three quarterbacks that were in the bottom three of our adjusted completion percentage. So you take out drops, you take out spikes, throwaways, the stuff that isn't really an accurate pass attempt, and you look at what you're left with, and Carson Wentz and Cam Newton were two of the three worst guys in the National Football League last season. Carson Wentz was putting together an MVP caliber season, and Cam Newton has been an MVP caliber player in the past. The third guy was Deshaun Kaiser, so it can go one of two ways. You know, you can either offset the inaccuracy or you can be terrible. So it's not all good.
So I think Kaiser. A lot of people have compared the two because they've got NFL type athleticism and arm strength and all that stuff. Allen has a better arm than I think everybody. We've seen since Cam Newton, if not better, with this pure velocity.
That's the obvious comp.
But Kaiser did a few more NFL things as far as being able to work through progressions and stuff. He just didn't do it consistently. So I think, but I still think Allen was a better prospect than Kaiser. We had him ranked a little bit higher than Kaiser last year, probably in a similar range though. So.
So the important thing is how to embrace what Cam Newton and Carson Wentz have done, because that is how Allen has to be successful.
Yep.
Carson Wentz last season was inaccurate overall, but he was money on third downs. He made a lot of big-time throws deep down the field, so it didn't matter that he missed the occasional screen pass or the occasional shallow cross that everybody else hits all the time. That's the trade-off you need to make. If you're going to be bad at the easy stuff, you need to be exceptionally good at the stuff that's more difficult. And that's how Cam Newton was so good back in 2015 when he was amazing. Down the field, his accuracy was insane.
Right.
It's just that on the underneath stuff, it didn't work. And that's why he regressed when they went to that game plan of, we'll get Christian McCaffrey, we'll get Curtis Samuel, and we'll ramp up the number of high percentage plays we give him. The problem is he's never going to be good at that stuff. So all you're doing is taking away from the big plays he's making and putting more of his attempts into the easy stuff that just doesn't offset the bad enough. So it's a false economy. You're actually making him worse overall because you're increasing the percentage of time he's doing the things that he's not good at. Allen, we've said before, he makes a lot of big time throws, and he's been good in the red zone. If you put him in a system that is intentionally sort of high variance, intentionally low percentage.
Yeah, chunk plays. Try to just find those chunk plays. And if he lands at 58% completions, but 7.5 yards per attempt, because that's a tough thing to do, right? That's 25-yard passes and then a couple incompletions. Then you could build around that. There's something to do there. Whereas if you try to make him Tom Brady, short game and dink and dunk all the way down the field, it could get ugly.
So this is the thing. I mean, and this is why we have him as a lot less of a sure thing than some of these other quarterbacks, because it's harder to create this offense that he's got to make him succeed. You need to do a little bit more work than you need to do for a guy like Mayfield or Darnold, where you can legitimately plug them into any NFL offense and they should be fine at it. It's a little harder for Josh Allen, but it's possible. So as long as the Bills understand what it is they need to do to make this guy into a functional NFL quarterback, I think it can work.
His quick game is just terrible. I mean, I tweeted out a whole playlist of stuff last week, which was like late in the quick game, misreading linebackers, bouncing 5-yard stick routes. So there's a lot of work to do with Allen. I don't want to beat it too much. Beat the drum, beat the horse. Is that what it is?
Yeah, flogging a dead horse.
I'm trying to save myself.
Yeah, okay. I mean, look, we just need to explain a little bit what this pick is.
Yep.
So they've gone aggressively after a guy that they like as one of the top quarterback prospects in this draft. They've taken him at number 7, and it's a gamble, but that's fine as long as you have a plan for how to achieve this. If they have no plan, now is where you've got problems.
And I'm going to end it with this when it comes to Allen. With Hackenberg, we specifically said he's an undraftable guy. We don't really see a path to success there. With Allen, there is a path to success, and it's all about playing the odds. We had Baker Mayfield at number 1 because we think it's just a higher percentage chance that not only can you build around him and have success, just a higher overall percentage of success, then Darnold, then Rosen, then Lamar Jackson, then Mason Rudolph, then Allen. There's still a small percentage chance of success here. It's just lower than the other guys, again, in our mind, based off our data, our film analysis, and that entire breakdown. So don't hate Josh Allen, but a little rich for us at number 7. Let's go through the rest of the Bills draft quickly.
And then they reached again.
Look, Tremaine Edmonds at 16. I get it. You're running this zone-heavy defense in Buffalo. You do need some athletic linebackers in the middle of the field. That's what he is. 6'5", 250 plus, moves extremely well.
Did you know he's only 19?
I heard he's only 19 years old. I heard Roquan's only 20.
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot to like about Tremaine Edmonds. We had him more as a late first-round pick rather than a mid-first-round pick.
They traded up for this again, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
They had a lot of draft capital to use here, but they no longer had a second-round pick here. Give me the quick blurb on Edmonds.
He is tremendously talented. He's athletic. He is it's all potential. He has been a solid college player, not a great one. There were 2 better linebackers, I think, in this draft class, Roquan Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. But everybody is picking a guy like Edmonds because of what he can be, not because of what he is right now.
From a production standpoint, what he might look like was early career Kiko Alonso, where Kiko he would make some spectacular plays in coverage, had pretty good range, and his run fits were just a disaster early in his career. So he'd make a ton of tackles, but we saw this a lot with Edmonds on film, either late to his run fit or taking on the wrong block or wrong side of the block and all that stuff, and he gave up a lot of big plays.
He did, and he did get better at that over the year. There was a ton of that early in the season. Then he got better at it as the year went on. But you can see plays in his tape that show you everything you want to see. The problem is you can't see enough of them yet. And it's going to be a fascinating case study, actually, him and Leighton Vander Esch. Which is the more important aspect of potential and upside? Is it the fact that you're only 19 years old and therefore there's 2-3 years worth of physical and mental growth in your development and that's what's the difference? Or is it playing time? Because Tremaine Edmonds is almost twice the college playing time of Leighton Vander Esch in terms of how many snaps they've actually seen on the field.
And more playing time than Roquan.
Exactly. So if you're looking at youth in terms of playing time, Leighton Vander Esch is significantly less experienced, even though he's a couple of years older. So which one of those things is more important? How much you've played the game or just simply how young you are?
Let's go to pick number 3, Harrison Phillips. By the way, that Edmonds comp that I said with Kiko Alonso, purely off a production standpoint, coverage versus run game versus, rather than style. Harrison Phillips, round 3. A lot of people liked this pick. It's not a terrible spot to pick him. 90.3 PFF grade last year, but all of that as a run defender. What's that look for? Too high for you?
Just another reach.
He's a run defender first, and that's the issue. People are already comparing him to Kyle Williams, who is ridiculous. Awesome. Explain why that is ridiculous.
Well, Harrison Phillips is Kyle Williams first. He's awesome. Has always been at his best as a penetrating 3-tech pass rushing type of defensive tackle. He's been good against the run as well, but he beats you at quickness and he beats you against the rush. Harrison Phillips beats you by bench pressing you into the opposition. Almost always against the run. So they are completely polar opposite players. So most of the pre-draft process, I was railing against how high people had Harrison Phillips. People talking about him in the second round. Some people were saying first round. Lunacy. I had him down in the 5th. Having said that, how this draft panned out, I actually don't hate the tail end of the 3rd. I think it's a little bit maybe too rich for me, but it's in the right kind of ballpark.
Well, the draft was terrible after about the middle of the second round.
Yeah, so I think, it's maybe a little bit of a reach, but I don't hate this pick. He's an interesting player, though, because it is all against the run, and it's all sort of brute force and power bench pressing guy. I mean, he had 40-plus reps at the combine of 225, and he has long arms.
And it shows up on the field.
Usually it's the guys that have short, stumpy arms that only move the bench like this much that can knock out 45 reps. Harrison Phillips is able to do it with long arms, and you do see that. That's everything. That's every play, basically, is him bench pressing an offensive lineman back into the running back and then making the tackle. I just don't know what he is at the next level. I don't know if that's going to work against bigger, stronger linemen. I don't know if he's going to be able to rush the passer at the next level, and I don't even know if he's big and stout enough to hold up at nose tackle. And if he isn't, then you end up with like a sort of 3-tech / 3-4 end who's only good on rundowns. I mean, that just is not valuable in today's NFL.
Yeah, but you know what? When you look at their run defense last year, when they were trotting Cedric Thornton, who was kind of a Harrison Phillips,
there's your problem, right?
Type of 5.
So if he can only be that and can't actually man the nose, you end up with a Cedric Thornton, and that was useless.
He was getting
them no good
at nose tackle, but they got Star Lotulelei. They just needed to shore up their run defense. So in one of those, like, let's make the roster better immediately moves, it could help. But I understand the lack of pass rush potential. He's just not Kyle Williams when it comes to it, but it's pretty good value in the 3rd. Let's do something positive for the Buffalo Bills. 5th rounder, Wyatt Teller, a guy that we had as a late second round type of value at guard. 4 years of outstanding production at Virginia Tech, grading at least 85 to 89 every single year, and just a mauler in the run game and pretty good in pass pro. So we like that Wyatt Teller pick. That would be our sleeper for the for the Bills. We've seen the Bills grades all over the place that other people have given out, almost completely dependent on what you think of Josh Allen. If you love Josh Allen, you love the draft. We don't love Josh Allen. We think it's an average to maybe slightly below average overall haul for the Bills for what they had. First 3 picks
kind of reaching. Having said that, they reached on potential. So it's all a case of where do you stand on risk management? If you're fine with taking that much of a risk, if you're a bit of a gambling man, this is the draft for you. If all these gambles end up hitting, this is an outstanding draft.
Well, again, the alternative to Josh Allen in this respect, where you need a quarterback, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Mason Rudolph, or it's
Josh Rosen.
So it's weighing those guys against each other. Heard some reports that maybe if they didn't get Allen, Mason Rudolph would be the guy at 22, by the way.
Which would have been fun, given that no one else is going to pick him till the 3rd round.
No, I know, and that just shows that the draft doesn't always indicate true value of a player. Mm-hmm. They at least valued him as a first-round pick, reportedly. All right, we have to move on. We spent an hour on the Bills. That's too much.
Perfect.
It's too much per team.
But it is.
Good job, Bills fans. We gave you guys a little bit of love, at least in the analysis side of things. All right, Miami Dolphins. This is one of those drafts that I felt like it had a theme. Correct me if I'm wrong. Minkah Fitzpatrick, safety / slot. Mike Gesicki, tight end. Jerome Baker, linebacker. Durham Smythe, tight end. Then Kalen Ballage, running back, receiving running back. This feels like one of those drafts where they're like, hey, we got to get better. In between the numbers, both sides of the ball. That's where the NFL's winning games. We need speed at linebacker. We need coverage guys at safety/slot. We need a mismatched tight end or two. I kind of like the theme, at least, for where Miami went with all.
So I think that's your theme: is they got athletic. They got better athletically on this roster with this team. Minka Fitzpatrick, in addition to all the good things he does on the field, is a fantastic athlete. Mike Gesicki destroyed the combine. May have been the greatest workout in the history of the combine, right up there with that Vernon Davis workout from years back. Kalen Ballage is an athlete, a better athlete than he is a football player right now. Jerome Baker is a fantastic athlete at linebacker, had a good 2016, not as good 2017. I mean, this is a draft to get more athletic.
And you don't draft just to beat the New England Patriots. You don't draft just to win your division. But when you do have to play the Patriots twice a year, having a Fitzpatrick, a safety that should be able to match up with tight ends, match up with slots, match up with the best in your division, the best in the conference, makes a lot of sense.
Sometimes you do. Like when the Vikings got Randy Moss, the Chicago Bears went out and drafted a ton of cornerbacks because...
I mean, to a point you have to.
We can't... At the moment, we can't match up with this guy. We need to find a way to do that. And that's the same with the Dolphins or anybody else that has to play the Patriots multiple times in a year, or even once in a year.
I thought the Jets just getting Jamal Adams last year and Marcus May, going safety heavy early in the draft last year was a part of that too. Similar strategy.
So, there's something to that. You do need a way of achieving that because you're going to play these guys twice a year, and at the moment, they are a team that you're going to need to beat in order to go where you want to go.
The important note on Minka Fitzpatrick, I've been tweeting this article out left and right over these last couple of weeks. It's all a part of Edge and Elite. It's part of that package. We put it behind as part of that entire 365 days of access. It's the one written by George Shahori and Eric Eager.
Nicely done.
Yeah, thanks. About slot defenders and their value. The guy that they brought up was Minka Fitzpatrick, who only had 13 snaps on the outside last year, but he's used to playing in the slot. He's used to covering slots, and the point of the article is how valuable the slot is. We keep hammering this home. The value of the slot is as valuable, or if not more, than covering on the outside. Covering tight ends is extremely valuable. But also, there's another coverage article that they dropped 2 weeks ago that said the best way to project slot corners is to find guys who did it in college. In college to NFL, you can kind of see if they did it well in college, they'll do it well in the NFL. Our early returns on our 3 years of data that have translated to the NFL. So those are your Brian Pools of the world and Mike Hiltons, these guys who they're afterthoughts in college and go into the NFL, but they have this experience. Minka has this experience covering the slot, and if you keep him there, this could be an extremely underrated, valuable pick. I love it. It's the right draft slot for him at 11, but I think it's great. I just love the fit, and it works well for Miami's defense.
Yeah, and he covered tight ends as well, so he's got experience covering those bigger body guys, not just smaller, shifty slot receivers. He is the prototypical modern slot weapon on defense, a matchup player. For years, the offense has been finding these matchup weapons, whether it's guys out of the backfield, running backs that can be matchup problems, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, whether it's tight end players like Rob Gronkowski are simply too freaky for you to match up with, or guys like Aaron Hernandez before that, went off the rails. In terms of being able to pose you matchup problems. So he could be a receiver or he could run the ball. He could carry the ball in the backfield, and that was how he became a matchup issue. But the offense has had them for years. The defense really has been playing catch-up. They've been struggling to find these guys. Tyrann Mathieu is probably the most obvious example in recent years. But all of a sudden, we're starting to see a bunch of these guys come out in college football. Guys that actually have experience playing this sort of slot matchup weapon role. And instead of the NFL projecting these guys somewhere else now because they think that's more valuable, I think they're starting to catch up to this idea that you need these guys. They are the only ones that can directly cover the players that are giving you problems on the offensive side of the ball. So keep them where they are and take advantage of that.
And multiple slot corners went in the second round up and down this draft, which was great. We'll talk about one in a moment. So, look, I liked the Dolphins draft. I think we gave them a good overall grade. I like the fits, and I like the Fitzpatrick-Gesicki matchup at practice. I might go to their training camp just to see those guys.
It's very hot down there. We went before. It was.
Forget it. I'll stay home.
Also, they have a backfield now that has Kalen Ballage and Kenyon Drake. So
immediately your favorite?
I'm a fan now.
Ballage was one of those guys. The grade wasn't good. never really had a productive season running the ball other than an 8-touchdown game against Texas Tech when you could have probably had 5 that day. But receiving weapon at the next level, potentially.
Well, so the thing is, he's capable of doing both at a high level. He just hasn't done it at the same time. He's never put it all together. The usage pattern in Arizona State was weird. They kept lining him up as a wildcat kind of quarterback and running ridiculous things instead of just giving him the ball and letting him run, conventional run concepts that might have actually worked. So there's a lot of potential there. He is a fantastic athlete. He's a big, strong player. He can make people miss. He can catch the ball. He was really good in one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl doing that. I think he has the potential to be a much better pro than he was a college running back, which actually, ironically, is exactly what I was saying about Kenyon Drake, which is starting to look like it's true. So if I'm right about...
What did you say about Kenyon Drake?
So I said during the game where Alabama were pounding somebody that Kenyon Drake was going to wind up as a better pro than Derrick Henry. And this was at the time where Derrick Henry had about 1,800 yards at the time.
Yeah,
Kenyon Drake didn't have that many.
So, this year.
Well, we were very early at the time I said it. We may still be a little bit early, but it's starting to turn that way. Kenyon Drake is looking pretty good.
Henry's going to be the go-to guy this year.
Kenyon Drake, I think, led the National Football League last season in yards per carry after contact.
Well, that's because he was running behind Miami's offensive line.
Well, yeah.
More opportunities.
Well, that gives you the line at which you're contacted. That doesn't give you the yardage you gained after contact. Yeah, 4.3 yards per carry after contact. That's half a yard per carry after contact more than Alvin Kamara, who led everybody else, and more than LeGarrette Blount. Derrick Henry, by the way, was 5th in that category, 3.2. So more than a yard per carry, more than Derrick Henry. I'm just saying I might still be right about that.
You might.
And if I'm right about Balaj as well, that suddenly gives them an awesome backfield.
Then we love this draft even more.
Yes.
If Balaj hits.
So Miami Dolphin fans, let's hope that I know what the hell I'm talking about, and then you're in business.
All right, going on.
Not so good.
Going on to the New York Jets. Look, we gave the AFC East pretty good grades. We gave the Jets an elite grade.
Well, that's because they got a quarterback.
And this was completely dependent on the Giants' decision. Essentially, had the Giants selected Sam Darnold like we think they should have, then the Jets probably got an average grade.
Well, this draft probably couldn't have fallen any better for the Jets because Sam Darnold was the quarterback that most people had as their number one QB in this draft. Not PFF, but most people. So if you assume the Jets did...
but they didn't.
Allegedly.
Todd Bowles came out and basically said Baker number 1. Darnold was number 2. I believe the Giants even said Baker was their number 1. So that's the only way that this draft could have fallen better for the Jets.
Yeah. But they end up with a guy that most people had as their number 1 QB on the board who I think everybody thought was going to get taken somewhere in the first 2 picks. Winds up available at number 3. No-brainer for them. And this has a chance to turn around this franchise.
Yeah, I love it. Look, we talked about it on the NFC pod for the East side. Saquon Barkley versus Sam Darnold. To me, it's all about those two guys this next 5 to 10 years, watching their careers unfold. I did give some false information on the other podcast. I don't know if Giants fans are listening here, but I apologize. I was talking about Barkley's 5th-year option.
How many million were you off by?
I was about 100% off.
Is that a lot?
It's going to be about $9 million or so. Either way, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be really high for a running back. Is the point there? So Darnold versus Barkley. I mean, it's going to be the battle for the New York news over the next few years. Darnold's progression versus Barkley and what he brings to the table.
Look, all of the analytics data that they've been pulling out in terms of wins above replacement and value and EPA and the trade value stuff, what chance you have of winning the trade, etc. Everything is the passing game. If you don't have a strong passing game, you're sunk. And if you don't have a good quarterback, you don't have a strong passing game. So the Jets had a 30% chance or something of winning that trade with the Colts. And the 30% is the chance that Sam Darnold hits. If Sam Darnold hits, everything is fine. The Jets made the right move to trade up, get their guy, and that has fixed that franchise for the future. So everything rests on that number 1 pick. The rest of the draft, which we like as well, is almost incidental. It's just whether you found the quarterback at number 3 or not, and then everything else is gravy.
Real quick, what I like about Darnold, especially his ability to make NFL throws. Number 2 in the draft class, big-time throw percentage. 2 years under his belt, redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore, and you saw him in crunch time making huge plays. The reason why I had him above Josh Rosen was because they could both make those special NFL throws. I think Darnold's are even better. We kept saying his big-time throw playlist, because we just watch all these in a row, 25, 30 plays in a row. His was as good as anybody in the class. Better than even Josh Allen. Better than even Baker Mayfield. His high-end best throws, we're talking dropping them across over 3 defenders in a perfect spot.
Throw the ball is hard, though.
Wasn't as fast, but it got there. So his high-end plays are just spectacular. I like the fact that he also can make them outside of structure a little bit better than Rosen as well. So that's why I just think he's a better prospect than Rosen. And again, in crunch time, other than maybe one game against Washington State where he struggled and had a game-ending fumble, always seemed to come through and make these comebacks late in the half, late in the game. I just love so much about Darnold's game. Has to cut back on the turnover-worthy plays that marred his game last year, but that felt like it was just more of this 4-game slump more than this full season issue.
You're not at all concerned by the scouting report that simply read loopy motion, bad face, overrated?
Well, then there's that. And no, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned. But
also,
he's got a decent face.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, for a franchise QB?
No.
It's decent. It's not bad.
I mean, there's some video of him throwing the ball looking pretty...
That's not when you track the face. You need a press conference face.
Press conference face?
Yes, it's not throwing. Everybody's got an ugly throwing face.
So you're not at all concerned by the loopy motion in particular, because our boss, Chris Collinsworth, and Fred Gaudelli, producer?
He's the
extraordinaire.
Producer of Sunday Night Football.
Producer extraordinaire of Sunday Night Football. They're big on the tracer. They put all these QBs on the tracer. They track their motion and time it. You'll see that every week pretty much on Sunday Night Football. And they did it for all these top QB prospects. And Darnold came out on the lower end of the speed, which puts them with guys like Blake Bortles, a couple of other bad QBs whose names escape me right now.
You hate the tracer. I can't believe you brought it up.
I was just curious. What's your take on the tracer,
If you're
Steve?
listening, Chris,
he's slow.
Sam loves the tracer. I don't think he looks that slow on. I know I'm not a tracer.
You're not a tracer?
I think it looks quick enough. And here's where he makes up for it. The first thing I wrote in his redshirt freshman report was his unbelievable anticipation and ability to throw guys open in zone. That is what offsets the tracer. So it's probably on the slow side. It doesn't look that slow, but he does make up for it with the anticipation and accuracy. In the ball location charting that we did, it's all in the draft guide. He was one of the best. He was right there behind Baker Mayfield. He was right there at the top of when guys had a step of separation. He was right near the top there, which is the important number. Hitting open receivers at the next level. As long as you can scheme them open, he'll be able to hit them. I mean, he has so much of what you want, and I do think his bottom end, which was rough at times last year, was more anomaly than a part of his DNA.
Well, the bottom end gets a lot better if he just figures out how to hold onto the ball. I mean,
fumbles were bad.
There were a bunch of plays where he just goes voomf and ball flung out of his hand at random.
There's no doubt.
If he tightens that up, he's immediately 50% better.
So I like what the Jets did there.
There's 2 more picks in this draft that I love for completely different reasons. The first is we have no PFF data on this guy whatsoever. Nathan Shepard, interior defensive lineman from Fort Hays State. Not a football powerhouse, you'll find. But he looked he looked to have absolutely freaky movement skills, like ridiculous for a big guy. And then the other one is a complete PFF guy, a guy who has dominated PFF coverage numbers basically since we've been doing this, jumped off the tape. Parry Nickerson, cornerback from Tulane, had an 85.1 grade last season, had some absolutely phenomenal coverage numbers, barely allowed anything to his coverage for 4 straight seasons at Tulane. Also had one of the best interceptions you're ever going to see. Climbs up over a guy, picks it off.
He runs 4.3 too.
Then finger wags the quarterback from 55 yards away, just to illustrate the point, which I love. But last season allowed a passer rating of 39 when targeted. That's not a lot.
That's low, yeah.
You know what that is?
What is it exactly, Sam?
It's coincidentally just below the passer rating of the guy just throwing the ball into the ground every play.
Just spike it.
Yeah. So Parry Nickerson I love as a pick. Especially, we had this guy in, I think, the bottom end of the 3rd round. They got him all the way down in the 6th. That's a steal.
Potential steal there. Let me just highlight Folo Fatukasi out of UConn as well. We had a little fun on our YouTube live show talking about, hey, if this guy was drafted in 1985, where would he be projected? Folo would be like a second-round pick around
To the
1993.
Lions.
Don't hate on the Lions' run-first approach. Folo is outstanding against the run. 4 years of excellent run defense and has that early down potential. Got him in the 6th round, which is where those one-down run stoppers should be going these days in today's NFL.
Like Harrison Phillips?
Well, no.
No?
He's a little bit better as a pass rusher than Folo. Folo is like 113th or something like that in pass rush productivity. It's all on our draft grades. We have the exact numbers. All right, New England Patriots, we're spending a lot of time on each team. We're just giving a lot of content. Hashtag content today per team. New England Patriots.
Well, here's where it should speed up because I can't see why we'd want to talk about the Patriots.
Look how many picks they had.
I know.
Way more than you expected. There was a joke that they had a draft board of, 4, 8, 9, plus Frank Ragnow plus Rashaan Evans. I think it was an 11-person draft board.
No, because they didn't want 3 of these guys.
No, that's true, too.
So they had a draft board of like 7 guys plus the extra 3.
They got Danny Etling, Camp Arm, in the 7th round.
So they went teammates, roommates, in fact, Isaiah Wynn and Sony Michel, both out of Georgia in the 1st round. The second pick basically ruined Georgia's draft night. We were doing YouTube Live in the PFC
not Georgia.
studio.
Yeah.
No, George.
Shahuri.
Not Georgia.
Right.
George Shahuri. Ruined his draft night. We were talking about, basically he was here to talk at length about how pointless the running game is in all aspects of the NFL and how you should never take a running back anywhere, let alone number 2 overall or in the 1st round. And, he just about gotten over the Saquon Barkley thing. Then the Patriots. If there's one team that's going to outsmart the rest of the league and explain exactly what the numbers tell you, it's the Patriots. They come along, and they're the team that takes Sony Michel in the 1st round, a running back, despite having a loaded backfield already. I thought George was going to break down. I thought he was close to tears.
But at least just like with Barkley, at least they're going to use him as a receiver quite a bit and at least maximize whatever running back value you can get out of him.
If only they already had 2 of those on the roster.
They have James White.
Yeah. They got more. Rex Burkhead, right?
Yeah, Burkhead's okay. Anyway, Isaiah Wynn, he was one of those prospects. We keep saying keep guys at tackle.
Well, this is where they were smart beforehand. Keep
guys at tackle.
They'd already done one really smart thing.
He looks like a guard, 6'2", but he only gave up 5 pressures last year in the SEC. Plays left tackle like a NFL tackle. He's going to have a shot, I think, to play left tackle for the Patriots, which is a big need after losing Nate Solder.
Everybody else was projecting this guy inside to guard, making a move at the next level. He played in at guard at the Senior Bowl, and the Patriots came along and went, no, he's played fantastically at left tackle. I don't see anything on tape that says he can't play left tackle in the SEC.
In the SEC, thank you.
I don't see anything on tape that says he can't play left tackle, so we're going to take him as a tackle. And because none of you guys thought he could play tackle, his value is better where we're taking him.
Yeah. And
smart.
At worst, he moves into guard and he becomes a good player.
But then they went along and took the running back.
Then they took the running back, Sony Michel. Explosive player. You like him as a one-cut guy.
Yeah.
I think he's got some pass game ability to add to that Patriots offense. And then the 2nd round, day 2, was just trade down fest for New England.
Well, then they take a slot corner. So we're back to being smart, right?
Right.
We were smart at the start, then we went off the rails and we took the running back. Then we went back to being smart and we take a guy that's played the slot, that has done extremely well in the slot to be our slot corner. That is an interesting pick. What were the numbers on Duke Dawson's slot performance? Like 40?
Just dug them up right here.
There you go.
So out of 285 qualifiers last year, passer rating against Duke Dawson when covering the slot, he ranked 8th at 41.4. That's a little better than just spiking the ball.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, he ranked 38th out of 250, though. 38th out of 250 at 64.6. So that's it's a stat that could fluctuate a little bit. So putting 2 years of really good play together is very telling.
I mean, that's a proven track record of doing well in the slot, which is what we've been saying is so crucial to projecting slot performance at the next level.
And when you look at their current roster with, Stephon Gilmore, Jason McCourty on the outside as outside type of cornerback bodies, I think there's a path to playing time immediately for Duke Dawson.
Then it gets really interesting because they took Jaquan Bentley, linebacker out of Purdue, in the 5th round. This is a guy who was our number 1 graded linebacker in the nation last season, 91.2 overall PFF grade, ahead of Roquan Smith. And he was a guy.
But why wasn't he as high on our draft board?
So this is the thing. When we start off, we start off with the grading because that's what we do. And then we go through and we're looking for reasons not to take a guy as high as the grading says we should take him. And there will be some. Sometimes guys, the grading can be influenced by the team around him, by the scheme, by who he played, all these kind of things, right?
Athleticism, and everything's factored in. Yep.
And when we turn on the tape with Bentley, you see a guy who just destroys people in the run game, but is pretty slow-footed, doesn't have a great feel in coverage, looks like a real problem trying to play in coverage, even at college, let alone at the NFL level. So I had him way down the draft, somewhere in the
fifth, right around where they were
in the fifth.
Yeah.
And he was one of the guys that I wanted to get checked. I told you and Mike to have a look at this guy. Make sure I'm not completely off on this, because obviously if he hits and we dinged him despite our grading, loving him, aside from anything else, Neil is not going to be happy, and we're going to get shouted at.
Yes, absolutely. Why is this guy who graded very well
exactly
in the fifth round?
So I had you guys look at him. You both agreed he's going to struggle in coverage. Everybody else had said the same thing, but the Patriots are the team that takes him. And if there's one team that is capable of hiding what a guy does badly and maximizing what a guy does well, it's the Patriots. So I'm really fascinated to see if they can carve a role for him in an NFL defense that makes him successful.
So even the grades, before you even watch the film, the grades are going to give a little indicator anyway. 84.3 against the run in 2015, 85.4 in 2016, both really good grades, and then 95 last year, number one grade against the run. So immediately it's like, all right, his 91.2 overall grade, very run defense heavy. Coverage grades, it was a solid 79.6 last year, but he's coming off of 3 straight years in the mid-40s. So it's not all about a 1-year sample. You have to take this all into consideration. We have 3 years of excellent run defense, 1 year of okay coverage grade, 3 years of putrid coverage grades. So he looks like that 1 to 2 down run stopper at the next level.
And on the tape, that shows.
And it shows up on the tape, so it all matched up. So that's why we put him in the 5th round, despite a 91.2 overall PFF.
And they took him in the right place. I mean, that's where we had him. I'm just fascinated because that's the team that took him. They are a team that more than anybody else in the league understands how to put their players in the right position to succeed. Can they do it with him?
So beyond that, Christian Sam was kind of the opposite, athletic linebacker that they were just – there's always these 1 or 2 players that the Patriots are just on left and right in the process. Sam was one of them. Did not have a great PFF grade throughout his career, so I think they just see something in him.
So now this is the point where they spent basically the entire rest of the draft on the phones trying to get people to give them 2019 picks for their remaining 2018 picks.
They got a bunch. They got a third for a fourth. They got a third next year for a fourth this year.
And I'm pretty sure the players that they picked remaining were simply because they ran out of time on the clock.
Well, not Braxton Berrios.
Before they found somebody else to give them a 2019 pick.
They wanted Braxton Berrios. He is the little slot wide receiver. He's the little slot Danny Amendola comps left and right.
Yeah.
And with Amendola gone, there's, perhaps a path to playing time for him as well.
Uh-huh. Then they drafted the first and only quarterback they took in this draft, despite some people mocking them a quarterback in the first round to replace Tom Brady. They waited all the way to the 7th and drafted Danny Etling from LSU, who was possibly the most left field selection in the entire draft.
He may have been surprised that he got drafted, is the way I would put it.
Yes.
So I would say
when they called him up, there was probably a conversation that ran along the lines of, you're aware you're eligible for the draft, aren't you, son? Because we've just selected you.
At least I have a good arm. He's got a pretty good arm. He's not great.
He was a more surprising pick than the rugby player that's never played a down of football.
That's not a lie. Yeah. So, look, people like to give Belichick a ton of credit, like, oh, he sees something in every player. I don't think Danny Etling is this super surprising, developmental prospect.
That's my favorite part of this entire thing is everybody diving into his numbers to try and find something that makes him look like Tom Brady.
Right. I think they just got a camp arm, and instead of waiting till undrafted free agency, they did it in the 7th round because, like you said, they couldn't trade the pick.
Yeah. Now they still need a Tom Brady heir. They've just decided not to find it this year.
So we called it an average draft for the Patriots. That could be harsh if you're factoring all the draft capital that they got for next year. They're very loaded for 2019 once again as they wheel and deal. I love the Wynn pick at the top and really like the Duke Dawson pick in the 2nd. Sony Michel will probably be a good player. You just come back to that running back value deal at the late 1st round.
Have we only got one division done?
Yep.
All right, we need to speed this up.
Cincinnati Bengals, your hometown team, Sam. They go Billy Price, center, in the first round. I thought initially this felt like one of those, look, Frank Ragnow's off the board. Frank Ragnow's a better prospect. Let's get the next best center on the board in Billy Price. Some reports coming out that this was their guy all the way. It's a little bit high for where we had Billy Price, a 4-year starter at Ohio State who's solid, but not the best center in the draft.
Particularly because Ragnow went, I think, one pick above this, right? He went literally right before they picked. Billy Price is interesting because a couple of the center prospects that we had lower down than everybody else, the reason we did is because they struggle in pass protection relative to other people. But center, I think, is the one position in the NFL where the passing game is less important than the running game because their action plays, the number of plays where they are sort of one-on-one with a defender trying to pass block is so few that the difference between a really good pass blocking center and a really bad pass blocking center is like 10 plays in a season. Now, okay, those 10 plays...
They're also the most detrimental when you do give them up at center.
So those 10 plays could be really bad, but that's maybe one a game versus a whole game of run blocking way better than the other guy. So this was the dilemma we had with Jason Kelsey last season. He was so good as a run blocker, just mind-blowing, destroyed any run blocking grade we've ever given a center in the past 12 years of grading, but his pass blocking was below average. It was kind of knocking on for poor, and we just had this debate of how big a problem is that? Because, again, the difference between Kelsey and Travis Frederick was like 10 plays of bad pass protection.
But save that discussion for James Daniels when we get to him. That was even more
Same
extreme.
Conversation.
It was even more extreme. Price has 2 straight years of solid run block grades, 85.5 and 83.9. Again, solid across the board, but maybe not as good as some of the other centers from a pure grading standpoint. Mike Renner wrote up his report, loves the nastiness, the finish, the aggressiveness, a lot of the stuff the O-line coaches like as well, but that aggressiveness does lead to some of those whiffs and those misses. Was number 6 in our run block success percentage among centers in the draft class. It's all straight out of the draft guide. Round 2, Jesse Bates, the safety out of Wake Forest. He was getting a lot of second round type of hype, was a little bit rich for where I thought he would go, but I don't mind it. Like, I get why he was there. When you're watching film with these safeties, most of the time, if they get lined up on receivers, one-on-one, these quarters looks where you have to cover a slot receiver, most of the time my first note is like, well, he's struggling against safeties. Struggling against wide receivers. Bates is one of the few safeties that actually makes spectacular plays in coverage when lined up on receivers in quarters coverages. And the Bengals like to run a lot of too-high type of schemes. And when a guy's making spectacular plays like that, yes, he missed 16 tackles last year and he left a lot of plays on the field, but those high-end plays could really pan out. He's got pretty good ball skills. He's willing to get in there against the run. I don't hate the pick in the second round, just a little bit higher than the grading says that he should go, but I can understand it.
And there's some fun picks in the rest of this draft. Malik Jefferson from Texas is an athletic linebacker that's got a lot of potential. Former, what, Steve?
It's a former 5-star.
There you go. Former 5-star recruit.
As is Andrew Brown.
Never really showed it until this last season. We started to see glimpses of why he was such a highly regarded recruit. Played well, 87.5 overall PFF grade this past season. Showed pretty well against the run and the pass. I think he could be, especially in Cincinnati, who have had linebacker problems for years, he could be a guy that gets playing time there and actually starts to repair that. Mark Walton, one of your guys, one of your favorite prospects. Dion Lewis skills.
Dion Lewis like cuts?
He's got some freaky skills. That seems like a replacement for Gio Bernard, who could maybe move on. They get cheaper at that position and without dropping off. And then Darius Phillips, cornerback from Western Michigan, in the 5th. He was a guy that had a lot of good PFF grading. One of which is, am I thinking of the right guy? One of his seasons was at wide receiver.
His freshman year was at wide receiver, and then like 3 really good years at corner.
4 straight years of solid grading, one of which is at a different position, which is kind of impressive.
You can see with the ball skills, too. He had a spectacular game against USC, broke up a few passes, had an interception, punt return for a touchdown. His high-end play has been awesome. Late-round quarterback Logan Woodside, one of our guys we liked as a late-round potential backup, makes a lot of big-time throws, got to cut back on the bad decisions.
Yeah.
Now we're going too fast?
No, that was good because we're going to spend some time talking about the Browns, so we needed to fire through at least one team.
Another victory? I'm tired from the victory laps.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield's number 1 to the Cleveland Browns. Said it since October.
He did.
We just have to we have to reiterate that. It's just part of we have to capitalize on it.
Well, clearly the Browns got their PFF draft guide. They looked at all the data. They understood that Baker Mayfield was the best quarterback in this draft, the best player in this draft, according to our big board.
Do you understand that the narrative, like all the interviews we're hearing coming out of Cleveland? George just sent me a message today. He said, like, John Dorsey's like my spirit animal. What he was talking about with Denzel Ward and why he got him over an edge rusher.
Yeah.
I mean, it really sounds like our analytics team is giving these press conferences.
Look, so everyone is acting like analytics is dead in Cleveland, you know?
Well, one guy was.
No, a lot of people were claiming this, that they booted out Sashi Brown. He got all the picks, and now they're going to get some football guys in to make use of them, right?
Sashi took his numbers with him.
But Paul DePodesta is still in the building. There's a lot of smart guys still in there feeding all of this information to the right people, and they're clearly making use of it. Baker Mayfield and Denzel Ward is probably the smartest combination of picks they could have made at number 1 and number 4, and that's exactly what they did.
So we're going to talk about – so here's the thing with Mayfield. He's been our number 1 quarterback for a while, 2 best seasons we've ever graded. And if you haven't heard our Mayfield spiel, there's over 12 minutes on the YouTube channel. Yeah. I think unloading everything.
Go watch that 12 minutes so we don't have to say the 12 minutes again right here because this is already dragging on.
Crib notes, he's good at everything you need at the NFL level. He's good at the stuff that projects at the NFL level. He has plenty of arm, off-platform throws, good decision-making. He's the most accurate quarterback in the draft. Go check out his accuracy charting in the draft guide. It's all in there.
So like we talked about with sort of big risk quarterbacks, when the first thing you can say about a guy is he's got an incredible arm, it means he's probably not very good, right? If the first thing you can say about a guy is, yeah, but it's all down to the offense or down to the defenses he was playing, it means he's probably really good. Like if your only knock on the guy is giving me reasons why it doesn't count, it means he's awesome. And that's Baker Mayfield. His biggest knocks were, yeah, but he played in the Big 12, and yeah, it's all the offense and a supporting cast. Bull. That means he's awesome. The end. Next.
I am fascinated by Alonzo Highsmith, again, Browns front office, saying he's got all these quotes online about they did have Darnold number 1, Baker number 2, till the end of the season. And then the off-field, the interview process and everything, Baker blew them away. Now, we joke about the off-season skewing things too much sometimes, but with Baker and some of these guys, I think it showed that this is the stuff that shows up on the field. Because we have all these numbers that say on the field, Baker's blah, 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 awesome. But then people ask us, what about the attitude? And every time we've answered that question during this offseason, we said, we think it works for him. And just looking big picture, you can define a guy's attitude, but you can also see how does that manifest itself on the field. And I kept coming back to he's a walk-on at Texas Tech, first ever walk-on freshman to start. Do you know what happened when he went to Oklahoma? I'm going to steal this story from Andy Staples from our SI first round show the other night.
Only insofar as he won a job he had no business winning.
But he showed up on camp. He did not even tell Bob Stoops that he was going to transfer and enroll at Oklahoma. He showed up at the football office one day and he said, I've enrolled. I'm here. Oklahoma had Trevor Knight, who just beat Alabama in the bowl game, was the next big thing at Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield just walks in as a walk-on again and just says, I'm here. I'm here to be the guy. And he was. And he had 3 elite seasons in our PFF grading, 90+. I mean, that type of attitude, that works in his favor. And I think that's what the Browns fell in love with.
Yeah, and look, that was the other potential negative is what about his attitude? And the bottom line is you can take that 2 ways. You can either say, yeah, this guy's not the squeaky clean, never offensive quarterback that everybody is looking for, seemingly. Or you can say, yeah, this guy has an attitude. This guy says what he's going to do, and then he backs it up. And that you can see that in a bunch of quarterbacks that are at the very highest level. Tom Brady has a lot of that about him. Aaron Rodgers has a lot of that about him. Phillip Rivers spends his life joining with the rest of the AFC West. So I don't have a problem with that. I always said that was a positive, and apparently the Browns think so too. Now we just both need to be right.
We do need to be right still. It's not really a victory lap until he plays football well. But it was fun to watch when everybody thought it was Darnold or Allen. And that day, hey, it's Baker Mayfield buzz. And again, a lot of the stuff that's coming out of there sounds like stuff that we would say. The number 4 pick has caused a lot of controversy with Denzel Ward. And in our head, we're saying, look, it's all about the pass game. I can understand why people have him as the number one corner. We debated between Denzel Ward and Josh Jackson. I love Denzel Ward. If Saquon Barkley was on the board, I'm going Ward 1,000 times over Barkley. Mm-hmm. With Bradley Chubb on the board, we'll talk about the specifics with Chubb when we get to the Broncos breakdown, but essentially, we've mentioned it a few times, he's not a lock, top 5 pass rusher. He's a good all-around player, and there's a good chance that Ward can have a bigger effect on the pass game. And even the stuff that John Dorsey's talking about, which was paraphrasing, essentially, there's a lot of plays where Myles Garrett was getting pressure on the quarterback, and nobody hammers home the value of pressure more than us. But he was saying they were getting pressure on the quarterback, and we're still giving up big receptions. And the only way that you can erase that is with a really good corner. He can offset whether or not you get a good pass rush.
So this is what all these numbers are saying. The passing game is the most important thing, and of the passing game, obviously quarterback is the most important thing. The next thing is the coverage. And then pass rush is after coverage, is later down the list, because let's say you have a fantastic pass rusher. If he gets beat on the play and he doesn't get pressure, or even if he gets pressure and doesn't get home, doesn't get a sack, you can still give up a big play. Or a cornerback on the back end, the coverage can fix it. So even if you blow your play, the coverage can rescue that, and it still becomes a good play for the defense. If you're the coverage guy and you're a corner and you get smoked on the play, nobody's fixing it. It's a touchdown. You're screwed, right? So even just logically, it makes more sense that the last line of defense is the more valuable thing than the guy whose failures can still be rescued by a last line of defense. So you get the guy that eliminates top receivers, and it's more valuable than a guy who can generate pressure, which can ultimately lead to potentially eliminating receivers.
I mean, it works both ways, too. You can get torched, and then the pressure gets there. I mean, but overall, the cornerback can erase.
But there's more of the other plays than there are of those ones.
I'll use your numbers for you. Passer rating when pressured is in the 60s. 61 to 65, varies year to year. Passer rating on a pass breakup, Sam, 39.6.
There you go.
So how about that? So I like the pick with Denzel Ward. So Browns fans, if you're getting analysis that Denzel Ward was a bad pick, we love it. I think it's a great first 2 picks. This is where, in our Browns deep dive into the draft, we said this is where they could have really, really hit a grand slam with this entire draft, at least from the PFF board standpoint. I don't hate these next 2 picks. Austin Corbett out of Nevada, Nick Chubb out of Georgia, both players that we liked, but this is one of those, let's take Maurice Hurst out of it.
Not just that, but both players that we liked, I think, more than most people.
Right. But that was still like a little bit high for Corbett.
Yeah, which is ironic because we're saying now that this isn't the best they could have done.
Right. The best that they could have done, if they could have gotten, speaking of the pass game, Harold Landry, who we did have as a better pass rusher than Bradley Chubb. Imagine that. Yes. Forget Chubb, get Denzel Ward, and then add Harold Landry.
In the second round.
Who
could potentially have been a better pick than the one you would take at 4.
Let's take Maurice Hurst out of it because of the heart issue, and let's just pretend he's not a factor here. And then they go Josh Jackson. So then they could have had our top 2 corners, our top pass rusher, and our top quarterback. There's no better way to fix the pass game than that combination of 4 players. There's no better way. I understand the Corbett and the Nick Chubb picks. Corbett's going to probably play some tackle. He's got 4 solid years of tackle at Nevada. We liked him better on the interior, what we saw at the Senior Bowl. Nick Chubb's just a solid all-around running back. I love Nick Chubb and what he brings to the table. But, man, I cannot help but think, what if they got Harold Landry and Josh Jackson?
That would have been sick. I don't know if they would have double-dipped cornerback in the first and the second, though I know you and the analytics guys will say
I don't care what you have.
You can never have too many corners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they could also have taken an offensive lineman. They could have helped to repair that.
Connor Williams.
There you go.
Could have been there as well.
So you could have taken Harold Landry, you got your edge rush, and you could have taken Connor Williams, who could be your Joe Thomas replacement, your left tackle of the future. My biggest issue with Austin Corbett, who is a guy we loved, guy dominated at the Senior Bowl, so I'm always a big fan of Senior Bowl players.
You are like every NFL press conference starts with the Senior Bowl, just like you.
It's not that I was there. That's not relevant.
You're
it's
an
the
NFL
fact
guy.
That against elevated competition, against all-star competition, he dominated.
Well, no, you're proving to me that you could be in an NFL front office and more than just my social media guy.
You've got
the lingo down.
So I really liked him as a guard or center, particularly at center. I don't love him as a tackle where he played at Nevada. I think there's enough flaws on tape, even though we're talking all the time about you let the guy fail a tackle first. I think there's enough evidence that he will fail a tackle that he's a better center or guard prospect. I'm not saying you don't give him the shot to do it first, but I just suspect this one isn't going to work out there. The Browns are taking him by the looks of it as a tackle, and it's like a round higher than we would have taken him. That's the pick that I just have the biggest concern about. Nick Chubb, I think, will be a fantastic player for them, and I think he's really the forgotten sort of superstar at running back in this draft class because of that catastrophic knee injury he had.
No such thing as a superstar
a couple of years ago. The problem is, will he ever be good enough to justify the value of taking him that high? And that's the only question I have with that. Potentially, especially with a strong running back class, again, they could have taken Harold Landry, they could have taken Connor Williams, they could have come back in the third, gotten a Royce Freeman, somebody like that. And I just don't think the drop-off between Chubb and somebody like Freeman would be enough to make that more worthwhile than the scenario we've just painted.
And there's no cornerback depth chart, though. Travis Carey, Jamar Taylor, Bodie Calhoun. I mean, E.J. Gaines.
Don't hate on BBC.
These guys are not keeping me from grabbing Josh Jackson. They're not. No cornerback depth chart is going to keep me from taking a top cornerback. So that's the only issue. Rest of the picks, Antonio Callaway, another potential home run on the field and off the field. Kind of reminds of Josh Gordon.
Alternatively,
big play threat,
you just added a guy with a weed problem to a room with a guy who's trying to recover from a weed problem.
Alternatively, maybe they recover together.
Sure.
That's
possible.
Maybe
Josh can be a sponsor.
Baker ties them all together.
Okay.
Baker's going to keep them all together.
The other pick that I really like that's worth mentioning is Guignard Avery, linebacker from Memphis in the 5th round, pick 150 overall. He was a guy who, you don't often see this, but he legitimately split time between inside linebacker and edge rusher, like outside linebacker at a 3-4. You don't typically see people move kind of back and forth between those regularly.
No, not at all.
And he did them both pretty well. I think he's actually a better edge rusher than he is an inside linebacker and could be the guy, somewhere in this draft we're looking for a complement to Myles Garrett in addition to Emmanuel Ogbah. Guignard Avery could get himself into that rotation pretty quickly, even more than Chad Thomas, potentially, their 3rd round pick.
We gave the Browns a good grade on this draft. It would have been elite.
If they just did what we thought they should do in the 2nd.
Yeah, that's it. They're so close. But overall, it's probably an elite draft if Mayfield and Ward hit.
Well, anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's anybody with a quarterback. If the quarterback hits, you nailed it.
Right. So we definitely like that draft. Man, we are a couple more to get through.
Yeah.
Baltimore Ravens had 1 million picks. They maneuvered back in the 1st round to get Hayden Harris, tight end out of South Carolina. A little bit high, I think, for him. Our
very high
4th or 5th tight end on the board, I believe. But behind Dallas Goedert, behind Mark Andrews, behind
they got a
Mike
guy.
Gesicki.
They got a guy higher on our board in the 3rd round than they did with the 25th overall pick.
Yes, they did. But he's a former minor league pitcher.
Oh, yeah?
So he's a great athlete, just great all-around player. Hayden Hurst. I get why people like Hayden Hurst on film. He's one of those. He does have a couple highlight reel run blocks if you're into that thing. But the best thing he does is just get in the way, like every other tight end in this class. He is just fierce after the catch, though. He does work really hard after the catch. I understand why people like him. I just don't think he's as natural of an athlete as some of the other tight ends. Mm-hmm. Really good contested catch guy, though. And my analysis for until 7 picks later, they got Lamar Jackson, was that Joe Flacco does need to be more aggressive. His 5.7 yards per attempt or whatever he was last year is absurdly low. And Flacco has become this ultra-conservative, almost pathologically conservative quarterback, like Alex Smith. So he needs these Hayden Hurst that he could trust. At his best, he was just chucking it into tight coverage with Todd Heap and Anquan Bolden and taking chances. He needs a guy like Hurst to kind of get his aggressiveness
That's
back.
Baltimore's theme of the offseason is surrounding Joe Flacco with as many weapons as humanly possible, and then now Lamar Jackson, the quarterback of the future.
Yeah, and then in the 3rd round, we did like Mark Andrews as a better tight end option than Hayden Hurst, but he's more of a slot receiver. I don't know if he can block at all, whereas Hurst at least can do a little bit.
Like it matters.
And it doesn't matter. But Andrews another nice mismatch weapon. And then there's the whole trade back into the 1st to get Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
What is the Lamar Jackson plan for Baltimore?
I don't think they know yet. I mean, they've taken a guy who they believe can be the franchise quarterback of the future. He doesn't need to start right away. They are at least financially tied to Joe Flacco for the next year, so it makes sense that they would also be tied to him on the field for the next year. which gives them a season of sitting Lamar Jackson down and developing him as next year's quarterback, which I think is a perfect scenario for him. It also gives them a year to sit in a basement somewhere and draw up a Lamar Jackson offense, which we've said all along in this process is going to need to happen for him to be successful.
Yeah.
You cannot just plug him into a conventional NFL offense and expect him to run it flawlessly like Michael Vick in the West Coast offense. It's not going to work. You need to design a bespoke custom offense around Lamar Jackson, and that's how to get the most out of him. They now get a year to draw that up and to figure out what it's going to look like, and that is why I think this is such a great fit for him.
One of the storylines I wanted to track going in, there was 5 or 6 teams that you knew needed a quarterback. I'll throw Denver into that mix, Giants into that mix. And then there was teams like the Ravens or the Chargers or the Saints or the Steelers. You're just like, I don't know. Like, if they just fall in love with a guy, are they going to go get him? Especially the Ravens, we said maybe more than others, should be looking at first-round quarterbacks if the right guy falls, because how much faith can you have in Joe Flacco at this point? So I love the move to get Lamar at that point. He secured the 5th-year option with the last pick of the first round. So I like it. I can't wait to see what they do with it. Supposedly, a reporter asked Lamar Jackson if he was comfortable getting on the field this year in a non-quarterback role. Depending on how that question is positioned, I don't think it's an unfair question. If you know that Joe Flacco's the starter and we can run a few gimmicky plays for Lamar Jackson to get him on the field this year, while he's still in the quarterback room, he's still training to be the next starting quarterback. I don't think that's a crazy way to use his incredible athleticism. Is that an unfair analysis?
No, I think it was Tom Pelissero from NFL Network that asked that question to him, and it wasn't unfairly positioned. He was...
Well, people like to just flip out about all this stuff all the time. He's a quarterback. Look, I've written over and over, he's a quarterback. There's a path to success, but if he's not going to play year one as a quarterback, why not get the ball in his hands a few times?
And I think Jackson's answer was something like, well, they've told me I'm a quarterback, And I think he spent the last several months telling people that he's a quarterback.
And he is.
He probably just goes into autopilot when that kind of thing gets mentioned, period. But you're right. I think there is potential to use him in some kind of package where he is an athlete on the field in addition to learning how to play quarterback sitting behind Joe Flacco. But I don't know if they'll do that or if they'll just concentrate on, his development as a quarterback and they roll with what they've got this year outside of him in the offense.
So they have a ton of other somewhat interesting players. Orlando Brown, the massive offensive tackle who can't move all that well.
Baby Zeus goes back to the spiritual home of his forefather, his actual father, Daddy Zeus. That's fitting, right? That's where he should be.
I like it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens because on the field he's pretty solid. We worried even before the combine about his ability to handle speed off the edge. We'll see if he can develop that. But he engulfs.
He does.
He's an engulfer. It's our favorite word.
We never worked out what the whale from Moby Dick was actually called. I think the whale is a name, doesn't it? We need to call him that rather than Moby Dick.
I don't remember. Moby Dick blocker.
Yeah. That doesn't sound great. I think if the whale itself had a name, we could use that.
Get us that comment so we can get the proper nickname for Orlando Brown, engulfing second-level linebackers. I mean, other players that could hit. Anthony Averett, cornerback for Alabama, solid season last year, 4th round. Jaleel Scott, another contested catch type of guy, big, long frame. His highlight reel is as good as any receiver in this class. I mean, his game against Arizona State, go watch it if you can. Just 5 or 6 unbelievable catches.
I'm just automatically writing off anybody where you tell me they're a contested catch.
They start with contested catches. I know. Jordan Lasley, he can get open, but when he gets open, Sam, doesn't always catch the ball.
Well, that's not ideal. Having said that, Calvin Ridley's like that, so
I mean,
he went in the first round.
That's true. Lasley, what was his? He dropped to 19 out of 131 career catchable attempts.
That's a lot.
He ranked 333rd in the nation in drop rate last year.
That's not great.
There's not a whole lot more qualifiers than 334.
No.
Deshaun Elliott, another safety that they got a little bit lower than. I mean, we had him a lot higher on the board. I think he's a good not cover 2, but split safety range type of guy. So some good. I think they had a pretty solid overall draft.
Now we get to a fun draft.
And now the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
Overall grade was average.
Yeah, so let's start with that.
It started poorly.
Overall grade was average. So when we were going through the draft and we had the horizontal board all printed out, didn't get it laminated, but it was printed out, and we were crossing off names as they came off, first-round guys, second-round guys. We had a few guys we had second-round grades on, taken in the first round. I think we had 2 or 3 guys we had a third-round grade on, taken in the first round. Then the Pittsburgh Steelers came along, and they drafted Terrell Edmonds, the older brother of Tremaine Edmonds, safety from Virginia Tech. They took him in the first round. We had a 6th-round grade on him, and we really only put him that high once we heard that there was talk of him going in the first round. We went back and did some extra work on him just to make sure we weren't crazy to have him that low in the first place. And out of curiosity, we had a couple of draft guides sitting around the office that someone had picked up in the airport, started leafing through just to see where they had him, because obviously as soon as you tell people we had a 6th-round grade on this guy, Steelers fans kind of going nuts, on my timeline.
Well, look,
and it wasn't just us. A couple of the draft guides had him in the 5th round as well. So
you read draft guides?
I told you. They were sitting there in the office. People had brought them back from the airport.
That's true.
After Twitter was going all crazy up in my grill, I started flicking through the draft guide to find what they said about Terrell Edmonds. They had him in the 5th round as well.
Let's at least be kind about this whole thing.
How can we?
So the movement skills I get, I don't get taking him in the first round.
No.
I do think this was a very good safety class of just varying levels of coverage guys and unique talents.
Legitimate question, right? If the Steelers don't take him in the first round, how high would the next team have taken him, do you think?
3rd, maybe. 4th?
Yeah. So no matter, this has to go down as one of the worst picks in the draft.
Well, we have to wait and see.
No, we don't.
But what if he's awesome?
It's objectively a terrible pick if the next team to take him would have taken him at the top of the 4th.
I have made that point before. Even if he becomes Ed Reed.
Yes.
If you
could have got him in the 4th round,
yes,
it's a bad pick to take him at 28 overall.
Let's discuss the path to success for Terrell Edmonds. We've heard, I think Mike Tomlin was saying, look, he might play a little linebacker, safety mismatch guy.
So that's where it's interesting.
But this feels like exactly what they did with Sean Davis 2 years ago, who was not a great football player, did not grade well in the PFF system in college.
Biggest concern.
And has not graded well in the NFL, but he was a spectacular athlete who played some corner at the Senior Bowl, played some safety, actually in Maryland too, played both positions. And it felt like this is the type of guy the NFL needs. How many times do we say that? A guy that can cover tight ends, a guy that can do all this stuff.
I think that's true, but you need to start from a position of him doing it well in college.
So that would be my issue. When I watched him on film, I'm like, wow, he moves really well. The same thing I talked about Jesse Bates earlier, as far as like the movement skills and coverage. He can kind of be in position, but he was always a step out of position on every pass, on every play, and that's why the grade 76.7 last year was not all that great.
So we just talked about the NFL needing to find these matchup weapon players, guys that can neutralize offensive matchup weapons, and absolutely that is what the league needs, and it's great that they're embracing that. The problem is you need to find guys that have done it well in the past. You can't just take the best athlete you have and say, right, now we're going to teach you how to cover Rob Gronkowski. Because we saw with Sean Davis, it doesn't work. Right. You can't just take a great athlete and say, now be a better football player than one of the greatest football players of all time. It's foolish. It's not going to function that way. What you need to do is take a guy that's done it fantastically well in college and is a good enough athlete to then match up with those guys at the next level and say, okay, Minkah Fitzpatrick, you're going to stay where you are. That is, it turns out, a really valuable position in the NFL. And because you're so damn good at it and you're a great athlete, you are going to be this player for us. Terrell Edmonds has not been a good player doing that in college. The question is, can they turn him into a good player at the next level? My thing is, he might be best if you just moved him full-time to a linebacker. Forget this hybrid matchup weapon thing and say, okay, we're going to make him a conventional NFL linebacker. We're going to take advantage of that athleticism and that speed.
That might be the move.
He's like 10, 15 pounds below what would be considered a standard linebacker size in today's NFL, undersized a few years ago, but Roquan Smith levels. So let's see if he can put on 10 pounds of muscle, and let's just play him as a linebacker.
Pittsburgh has really revamped that whole safety core this entire offseason. Morgan Burnett comes in. Terrell Edmonds is in, safety, linebacker, whatever you want to call it. Marcus Allen was also drafted in the 5th round. He is your classic box safety. I mean, the classic hammer run-stopping safety, where in coverage, all you really want him doing is playing that curl flat short zone.
And that's the other reason I don't get this, is you already have Morgan Burnett that you brought in free agency, and you draft another guy. All of these people are box safeties.
Well, look at this depth chart now. Edmonds, I'm gonna let you look at it right now.
Thank you.
John Bostic, Vince Williams at linebacker, Edmonds almost has to slot up there with those inside linebackers when it comes to nickel and dime coverages, doesn't he?
But this is the thing. Look at that list. None of those guys are true free safeties, essentially.
No, I agree there.
So you've got a whole bunch of strong safeties. The biggest problem they had last year when they lost Ryan Shazier to that terrible injury is once that happened, the linebackers' the athleticism of the linebacker core fell off a cliff, and it was horrendous. Like those guys, whatever they are about players, are terrible athletes compared with the players they're going up against. So let's put Terrell Edmonds in the linebacker group and get back that speed, that athleticism, that quickness. Now you may have something there.
It just comes down to you're drafting positions over players, and that's where I don't love it.
Let's move on from that. That is one of the worst draft picks.
One of the positives
in the entire draft. We hate it. It's not good. Maybe they'll vindicate it to some degree, and he'll turn out a much better NFL player than he was a college player. It's happened in the past.
Well, look, if there's a place.
But we don't love the pick, no matter what way you cut it.
We didn't love the Keanu Neal pick because a couple years ago didn't grade well, but he switched his role and he ended up.
But at least that was one where most other people had him going high as well.
True.
The biggest issue with this is that they've not only taken a player that we hate, which happens, other teams have done it as well. It's that they've taken a guy that nobody saw coming in the first round, and they take him in the first round.
We were taking him in round 6,
which is kind of hating in a bad draft. Anyway, they went a long way towards rescuing this draft with their next 2 picks. Second round, James Washington, wide receiver, Oklahoma State. Third round, Mason Rudolph, quarterback, Oklahoma State. James Washington was a guy who I thought was the best wide receiver in this class. Mike Renner pulled an audible live on YouTube and just about faced the order and put Calvin Ridley as the number 1 guy.
I liked Ridley above Washington, though, too.
Well, you're both wrong.
Well, you convinced me. All the stuff that you pulled out about Ridley and his route running, boom, convinced me.
Dude, you need to listen to what I was actually saying. You can't just selectively hear things like that, because I also pointed out that he needs to be great at route running because he can't win contested catches, and he struggles basically catching the ball.
It doesn't matter. I weighed those in my head, and I said the route running trumps everything.
You didn't weigh anything. You just
what
heard
did you
route
love
running.
about Washington's game? Because I think you're right. The things that you love about Washington's game, I'm right there with you.
I don't really see any flaws in Washington's game. He's a big receiver. He's good running after the catch. He wins on deep balls, not just because of that offense, which is a big part of it, but he wins in a variety of different ways on deep balls, which I think is crucial. He understands how to win contested catches. He can take the ball away from the top of a defensive back, just jump up and bring it away. He can adjust to passes deep. It's fantastic. You can run straight by people. For a guy that people are questioning his speed, there are plenty of plays on tape where he just breezes past the guy. Crucially, he understands that when he does that, he will stack the cornerback, which means get past him and then maneuver yourself so you're not side to side, you're now stacked in a line. You are directly in front of where he is, which means in order to get to the ball, he needs to come through you, which is inherently harder to do. And he's really good at understanding, has that kind of Randy Moss understanding of when to back up a little bit and then step forward at the last second and generate that extra half yard of space, even when you're in tight coverage. So
that's a good fit for Ben Roethlisberger throwing the deep ball.
It is. It's also a good fit for Mason Rudolph, who is his college quarterback, which I think is also an added kind of wrinkle to this, is that they've taken teammates that already have this chemistry together.
Yep.
Rudolph in the third round, he was a guy we were talking about potentially being the 6th quarterback that snuck into the first round. To get him in the third, I think, is an absolute steal. Those 2 guys could potentially be a big part of this team going forward.
We also had Rudolph higher on our board than Josh Allen.
Yes.
3 excellent years of production. Yes, it was in the Big 12. Yes, he's got some issues, but the number 1 third down grade in the class last year, he graded really well in some very key areas. Rounded out the draft, Chukwuma Okorafor, Western Michigan. Among the 150 players that got first-round hype at some point during this entire process, he's one of them.
Yeah.
He's merely a developmental prospect at this point, 77.6 grade last year, but, looks the part at left tackle.
Well done, by the way. You've come so far when it comes to pronouncing names.
I don't know if it's right or not, but at least sounded...
It sounded confident. That's most of the battle.
Very confident. And then Jalen Samuel is the other real interesting hybrid player, announced as a running back, and he did it all at NC State. Running back, fullback, tight end, slot, just an offensive weapon, and... a lot of people talking about the future of football being positionless football. Jalen Samuels
positionless football
is the epitome of that. He's very undersized, though, so I don't really think he can actually play tight end at the next level. No. But he's going to be a receiver runner mismatch type of guy.
Yeah, exactly. Which could be more important for them in the future if they lose Le'Veon Bell after the season.
Is that it for the North?
Yeah.
Okay, that took forever, but
Did.
we wanted to give you guys some good in-depth analysis. That's 2 more divisions down. We still have 2 more to go. AFC South and West will be coming up on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. Don't forget, all this information is powered by PFF Edge and Elite. Go get yourself your 365 days of access. Edge has our QB guide, our QB annual, our draft guide, all of our fantasy tools. And then Elite, that's the big package, has the premium stats. There's our guide. There's the cover right there. Premium stats is in there. You will not want to miss premium stats, especially when the update comes this summer. Join.profootballfocus.com. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll hit you guys up with the rest of the AFC shortly.